What a day in crypto, man. The place is just absolutely wild. But guess what? We got core price index coming out tomorrow. So it all means what? Well, I'm going to explain to you in tonight's video. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet, give you a little bit of a breakdown on what we can expect with crypto. We've had some endorsements into the Bitmine treasury. Kathy has now decided that she wants to start getting involved in that. We're going to look at that company itself and the share price and give you a little bit of information on what you need to be mindful of. It's another micro strategy in the making, but with Tom Lee behind it, you know what? It might actually have a good chance. So let's break it all down. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to look at certain levels, give you an insight into what we can expect going into tomorrow's core price reading and how that is going to dictate whether or not traders, investors are on the expectation that the Fed is going to cut. But of course, Donald Trump and getting sued by Lisa Cook, that could obviously put a little bit of things on hold. But who knows? I mean, you know what? It's great to be alive in these financial markets. You don't realize that how boring it was back in the day. Like now, Federal Reserve's position being compromised. I mean, come on. That is just absolute fire. Let's get and bring the fire to you right now. Here we go. So today's readings from the economic data with the unemployment claims and, of course, the preliminary GDP hasn't really budged investors' sentiment in regards to where the interest rates are right now. 87.3% is still where everything is, so that seems like it's a good thing. But we got problems, man. This story here, Lisa Cook wanting to say, or her suit says that her firing by Trump is going to cause a risk for the US economy in the sense that Trump's only going to replace her with someone whose thinking and philosophy aligns with Donald Trump and his business way of doing things could actually put the US at risk or the US economy at risk. Well, that's kind of difficult to assume because if the GDP is going up, but of course let's just not get into the story of what the US owes. That's going to be a little bit far-fetched to assume that her firing is going to cause a problem for the US economy. It's already cooked, ladies and gentlemen, and it's only going to take her position to be lost to make it a problem? No, I don't think so. Now, just to put things into perspective, is the US economy or the markets, is there a disconnect? That's the question. This chart in front of you shows you the fund flow into US equity. Now, the way you use this chart is pretty interesting. Anything above 20,000, okay, it tells you that there is a lot of optimism, okay? But what you can see here is this. See these readings right here? Optimistically speaking, investors are very much into US equities. And you can see that for every time it peaks, okay, there's usually a bit of a pullback. And then when it tapers off down here, pessimism's coming into play. That's where usually price tends to consolidate and then things start to move up from that point. However, look at where we are right now. It's currently reading 59,530. The markets are at all-time highs. But US positions or flow into US equities starting to slow down, but when you look at it, it's actually starting to increase. I've said this before. Once we know where we are with the Fed cuts, then we can make the assumption that when the Fed pivots, that's when the markets are going to turn. But it's how much of a pivot we're going to get. 25 basis points, which is what everyone's expecting, is not really, in my opinion, going to be enough for the market to say, you know what? Let's just start pulling off risk. Just the event itself of the rate cut will actually encourage investors to get excited about things in the sense that money is going to be cheaper, but it's still up at that 4% zone. We're going to go down to 4.25. It's nothing really to get excited about. So here it is. A little bit of crypto stuff for you. Bitmine. Who owns it? Well, Fundstrat player Tom Lee is the guy who is trying to create a Ethereum treasury. Here is the ticker symbol for it. Looks absolutely dog, doesn't it? Would you invest in this company to earn a share or earnings per share from it? No, not really. It's just another company that effectively is like MicroStrategy. But Kathy believes in it. And already she has 300 million in Bitmine. And of course, with the latest $15 million buy, happy day. It says here, Kathy Wood's investment firm ARK bought 339,111 cryptocurrency shares for 15 million in Bitmine Immersion Technologies. But when you look at it overall, it's an absolutely horrible company to invest in. But why is she investing in it? Scope, ladies and gentlemen, the bigger picture, the belief that Fundstrat Tom Lee believes that Ethereum will succeed 15,000 and getting in at 4,000 seems like a pretty good discount. Now, with that being said, going over into other aspects of crypto, it says here that they believe that cryptocurrency or Bitcoin is pretty much done. According to this, it's saying that we're hitting a critical area of support past this 110,000. In other words, if Bitcoin breaks 110,000, we've got a little bit of a problem, but 121,000 seems to be the wall. And it's saying here that the risk oscillator is suggesting there's going to be we've got a little bit of a problem. It says here that high risk instability downward side pressure is coming into play based off this risk oscillator. But let's just flip it over. Going over into this, the stablecoin ratio, which effectively tells us how often are investors converting their stablecoins to crypto to stablecoins. Well, as long as that is showing a low reading, then that means things are all good. Let's go over to Bitcoin price action, put it into perspective. Here we go. So what we got, Bitcoin today, absolutely dog price action overall. It's come back into the blue vector candle recovery point, but what we need to be looking at is exactly where Bitcoin is on the daily time frame. So what we've got right here is a relatively decent daily candle. It's not doing too bad. It's staying above the previous day's close and open. So that's good news right there. But we're going into tomorrow's core price index, which is going to give us the information as to whether or not the Fed should be cutting the rates. They're expecting that the core price is going to come in higher. So could Bitcoin be getting prepared for a potential reversal to the upside? Because if tomorrow's core price comes in higher, then that's going to get investors thinking maybe the Fed shouldn't cut the rates because inflation is still proving itself sticky. But with that being said, going into the unemployment claims, when they've just changed of their goalpost, they're showing that it's coming in at 229,000. So they don't need to be worried too much about inflation because it's sticky. But as long as the unemployment market is showing that people are claiming less benefit, then the economy is sustaining itself. And with a reading of 3.3% on the GDP, realistically, the Federal Reserve does not need to cut the rates. Crypto fear and greed index, what's it showing us? Well, in front of you, you can see that we are at a level of 48. Now, it says here that if it's above 50, it's excessive optimism. Below 30, it's excessive pessimism. So you can safely say that we are at an optimistic point, okay? But is that going to put anyone off? You've got to remember, cryptocurrency is now being purchased on the idea of what the future looks like. Well, the problem is when people are trading cryptocurrency, there's a lot of leverage being consumed, and that's where things get a little bit tricky. Traders are holding on to dear life here, and we're starting to now see a balance when it comes to liquidation points and those who are actively in the futures markets. In front of you, you can see that we've got quite a few high margin traders with low leverage down at the sub level of 108,000. Top side of that at 116,000, you've got high margin traders up there as well. So realistically, if the market is going to navigate to an area, we're at an even spot right now because we're equally seeing the same amount of commitment on the short side and the long side. And whatever direction Bitcoin's price takes, it will certainly take direction when we know more about tomorrow's core price reading. Putting that into perspective, let's just quickly go over and have a look at gold for a second. Are investors in the anticipation that interest rates going to get cut? Well, if the core price comes in tomorrow showing that they are actively looking for an interest rate cut, gold's price should be rising. And gold has been asleep for a long time. Now, we did project this move to the upside. We didn't quite get the entry point, but the idea was that the narrative favored higher prices in gold because investors' expectation of interest rates being cut is coming to fruition. But again, tomorrow, is it going to be the cut that we want? We realistically need to see the core price index coming in line with expectations, maybe a little bit lower, because that would fuel the Fed to say, all right, we're going to cut. If inflation isn't as bad, then the core price index should come in lower. And that would give us the flexibility to cut. But if the reading comes in higher or sticky and it's in line with expectations, then the Fed's like, all right, man, we're getting pressure from upstairs in terms of Donald Trump. Like, we do need to cut at some point. But we're going to be cutting into stagflation. We cutting the interest rates when inflation itself is still a problem. Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll just focus on the unemployment market instead. I mean, the credibility of the Federal Reserve is going in the bin. Did any of you take any money off the table with this one? I mean, during the New York Live, it was all the way up here. And I said, guys, look, the way they do it is they sell it on the way up, reaccumulate, and then distribute. It's exactly what they've done here. Great news announcements for Chrome. Wonderful. But now we need to start accumulating more for the next projected thing or the next aspect of whatever there is there, whatever they're actually getting involved in. This is crypto when it comes to the altcoins. Someone partners up with someone or something great happens. It makes a big rally. Everyone starts buying and talking about it. Perfect time to sell it. Overall, with the day on Bitcoin, it really does need to try and get straight back up above the 140. Sorry, not that one. Sorry. Yeah, it really does need to get back up above the 112,676 to sustain the idea that the bids that have been collected inside of this range are looking to offer Bitcoin higher. Bitcoin is coming into a very interesting resistance with the 50 EMA, but the more Bitcoin can break into this 50 EMA cloud, the more conviction we can get that it's getting primed to start working its way back up. Near side resistances would be above here at 117,000. So Bitcoin can easily just mark up and then consolidate in this range before it tries to break that point. But I would say that it can successfully take the 117. We're going back into the red vector candle because this is exactly where I expect Bitcoin to end up very soon. So just keep an eye out on this range. With that being said, guys, so tomorrow is the core price index, and that is going to really move the markets. So if there is a time to get ready to buy some Bitcoin on the anticipation that, yes, the Fed's going to cut the rates and prices of assets are going to appreciate on that, tomorrow will be a much clearer picture for us once that data is released. With that being said, guys, please trade safely, and I'll be tuning into you all tomorrow. Hit the like, subscribe if you enjoy the bold. Mad love and respect.